Hello, this is Paul Johnston. I'm here with Sarah Peyton and Susan Jennings. Marilyn Mullen will be joining us soon, but she's actually off getting breakfast for herself and some of the other folks on the team here. We have Sarah coming in from out of town, and she's going to be doing a workshop today on...
Tonight, the talk is about children and trauma and resonant language and nonviolent communication. And tomorrow, the whole workshop weekend is starting tomorrow, is the material connected with self-compassion and the neuroscience of self-compassion and how nonviolent communication takes us toward that.
What we're doing today on the podcast is we're getting to know Sarah. We are sharing a couple of the other Rocky Mountain Compassionate Communication Network folks that are here, and we're just going to have a nice conversation about whatever comes alive. But to start, I'm going to skip what I was going to do because I want to wait till Marilyn gets here before I do that. So we're in the flow today. You're getting ready to do, Sarah, you're getting ready to do a couple of workshops. You've just traveled in from out of town. You've gotten, I would guess, not a ton of sleep.
It's an early flight from Portland, Oregon.
Sure. So I'm wondering what it's like for you as prepping for the class. Are you relaxed, nervous,
always
excited?
Yeah, thank you. There's a combination of nervousness and excitement and something else that's hard to name that has to do with a kind of ongoing bewilderment that I actually have anything to say.
So you have a lot of knowledge.
I appear to. There's a book sitting right next to you that I wrote.
It's a nice
book. You would think it would prove to me that I have things to say.
You do seem to have things to say. I'm looking at the book and I see 339 pages of things to say.
That's right.
Including some pieces here at the end. The book is Your Resonant Self, Guided Meditations and Exercises to Engage Your Brain's Capacity for Healing.
Yes.
Sarah Peyton.
That's me.
That's you. That seems like an interesting thing and common, I think, for people that teach is why would I have something of value to say? And
yeah.
How's that experience been for you? Because I know like the first time you came out here, I was at a workshop that you had done, and it seemed like that was a newish experience to be doing a workshop that big. And it seems like you've gotten into doing that more and more.
Mm-hmm.
How's that transition and growth been for you?
So exciting. When I lose track of the bewilderment about myself personally, the material is so compelling and it's so fun to share and it changes people's lives. So it's a really fun journey.
I like it. I also want to say Susan Jennings is here. So Susan, would you like to say hello? How's it been for you this morning?
Oh, hello. And it's been delicious to pick up Sarah at the airport and drive her to the site. We'll be a meeting for our workshop over the weekend and to have folks start to see her and get their arms around her and actually hug her and thank her for being here. So it's been a real, it's been delicious.
Oh. What do we want to talk about?
Well, how are you with self-compassion?
Just in general or in the moment?
No, anytime.
My self-compassion wavers between giving myself lots of spaciousness and care and self-love and some component, I guess, of not deserving that or not. It hasn't, self-compassion for me can have an element of force in it. Like I really need to give myself some self-compassion right now. And so it has to do with me like leaning in and going, all right, give yourself, this hurts, self-compassion now. So like I can do it. I have a sense that it would be possible to do that. And sometimes I do, I guess, but it would be possible to do that in a more relaxed way.
Wow. I always, when we get to ask these questions, I always start to wonder what are the deep needs that we are meeting with our nervous systems by not finding ease with things like self-compassion? What are the deep needs that we're meeting with our nervous systems when we believe and are deeply committed to the idea that we are not enough, or that we're not in the right place, or we're not doing the right thing, or we're not big enough, or we're not small enough? So my interest, of course, is piqued, as it always is, with all wonderful and amazing humans, about if we think about these voices that stop us from self-compassion in a slightly different way, if we think of them as voices that are trying so hard to make our lives more wonderful, what's the essence of these voices? The other thing I've started playing with is, to what extent are the voices installed by people other than us? So when I'm thinking about giving empathy to an internal voice, am I actually talking to myself, or am I talking to my parents? What happens if I give my parents empathy for the internal voice that I carry? This is an ongoing question, and sometimes I try it out, and I do empathy for my parents, and it's really sweet.
Marilyn is joining us sort of in the side, and she's I guess waiting for the food. That's what our...
I'll get it. Come sit, honey.
No, you have a microphone. We have needs that will be met by Marilyn joining us, and by getting to hear her voice.
Thank you, friends.
Hi, Marilyn. Can you say something else into the mic just so I can make sure I get a decent level for you?
Yes, I certainly can. So happy to be here. This is very exciting to me. Yeah, we're in the middle of downtown Denver and the hustle and bustle, and it's a lot of energy.
Totally is. So we were talking about self-compassion and these voices. I think for me, the voices in my head, I think of as different parts of myself pretty clearly. I haven't thought of the idea, or haven't really played with the idea of them actually representing other people. Family constellation work and stuff like that, I think, is tied in with some of the idea of what you're talking about.
Yes, family constellation work is the third leg on my stool of exploration of what makes humans do what they do. Yes.
Can you say more about family constellation work and how that fits in?
Sure. I won't be doing that here in Colorado this weekend, not in its full form, but family constellation work is a modality of exploration where you get to take advantage of something that most people don't even know is true about their brains, that we organize our sense of relationship spatially, that we get a sense of who is close to us warmth-wise, relationship-wise, and that it translates inside of our own heads to how close they are in our imagination to us physically. So if we start to explore a concept, it's like we know a little bit of what's happening. Like if I'm having a really hard time with a friend, and I know I'm having a really hard time with the friend, but I'm not necessarily seeing the people who aren't in the room with me visually, but are in the room with me emotionally. So if I'm having a hard time with a friend and I'm doing constellation work, then I become open to asking the question, who is a part of this equation that's not physically in the space with us? And then sometimes things can become very clear, very suddenly. When you ask that question, if I'm having difficulty with another person, is there somebody else that's in my emotional room with us that's contributing to this difficulty?
Is there some sort of an example you can give, or a memory that you have of one of those?
Yes, absolutely. For example, several days ago, I was doing some work with a man who was really angry at his boss. And so I said, okay, imagine a room with yourself and your boss in the room. And so he imagined himself and he imagined his boss. And he was standing in the middle of the room, and his boss was standing off in the corner with his back to him. And I said, okay, who else could be in the room with you that we're not seeing? And so he thought perhaps that his father was in the room. So he brought his father into the room, and as soon as he brought his father into the room, his father was standing in the far corner with his back to him, and his boss was sort of in a neutral position in the middle of the room, turned toward him. So all of a sudden there was an acknowledgement of the tremendous weight of the invisible that was on that relationship, and how it changes when we begin to acknowledge what's invisible, what's in our emotional space that's not being named.
Yeah.
Yummy.
And as you described that, I can even feel it in my own body. It's like, okay, these people, and I picture them, and then the father, the energy shifts, even for me, knowing nothing about what's actually going on in the dynamics.
Yeah.
I can feel the difference of that. And even just in your description, the strength of the presence.
Yeah. So this is a part of what I wonder about when we begin to enter a dialogue with our internal voices. And this is why I've started to wonder about empathy for the parents we carry within us. Because there can be two ways that we pick up patterns from our parents. One of these ways is by them speaking to us, or by them implying to us, oh, Sarah, you're lazy. So my mother could have said that to me. But another possibility is because we pick up the brain patterns of the people that we live most closely with. And in particular, we learn how to use our brains from the people that raise us. It's also possible that my mother said to herself, you are lazy. And I picked that up as if it were my voice. Oftentimes we are carrying voices that belong to others, but are not ours. So there's empathy for the voice as if it were a parent speaking to a child, but there's also empathy for the voice as though it were the parent speaking to themselves. All of these things bring different kinds of insight and different kinds of relief to people.
So the idea there would be that you're actually stepping into maybe your mother, stepping into the body of your mother and empathizing with her experience.
We all carry the people who raised us inside of us.
Sure.
My beloved epigeneticist in Montreal at McGill University, whose name is Moshe Gif, says, our mother is in every cell of our prefrontal cortex. That's 27 billion cells carrying our mothers. So it's very good to begin an empathy-based dialogue with that many cells.
And it sounds like you're stepping into that kind of directly.
Oh, yes.
As opposed to like working with it within yourself. You're saying, oh, I'm going to go to actually where this is.
Well,
Well,
it's in ourself. I mean, 27 billion cells is us.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have the right to work with the mother that we carry within us.
Sure.
Yeah.
And did Gif specifically say mother, not father?
She specifically said mother. Yeah. So what the research supports is an understanding that the first parent, whatever their gender is, let's call that first parent mother for simplicity, is the one that forms the child's sense of relationship with self. The second parent, let's call that person the father, independent of gender, because you can have families where there are two male people raising a child, and you can have families where there are two female people raising a child, and you can have families where there are two agendered people raising a child. So that's why we could say first parent and second parent. So the second parent, commonly called the father, is responsible for the child's relationship with the world. And then there's a third level of relationship that all of us step into, which is the relationship between the child and the child's community. So the way that we as adults respond to the children in our communities helps them to form a prediction about how they will be received when they bring themselves into the world.
Wow, Paul commented about how he was feeling in his body, a response to the last point you were saying. For me, it's like fireworks of connecting dots in my own relational world.
Yeah. We are more important than we know. With every interaction we have with someone who is below the age of 28.
Wow.
Because our brains are not fully developed until we're about 28 years old. So there's huge contributions that we're all making to one another in a fundamental brain development way for so long, so much longer than we usually acknowledge.
How can we take advantage of that for good?
Yeah,
For-
empathy. Moving into the world and connecting with empathy with all kinds of people that we come across.
Empathy in terms of awareness, honest sharing, listening.
Yeah, and being clear about what kind of language supports connection and what kind of language creates disconnection. Because if we're creating disconnection, we are not contributing to the brains of the people around us.
I'm thinking of a child that I was working with, Sarah, that we were talking about expressing our feelings, and the child said, it was a little girl and she was 6, and she said, when I cry, my daddy calls me a sissy, and then he gets me on the ground and he wrestles and tickles me.
Yeah.
And I'm just remembering the impact of hearing her say that, and what you're...
I'm wondering if there's some worry and mourning that you have for the way we as adults respond to little ones who are having feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that you're going to be speaking tonight to a very large group of people in the Denver community, but I know you're going to be talking about children, but I would so enjoy your sharing. Let's see, what is it that you would love every parent or caregiver to really understand about resonance and empathy with children? What is it that you think we are missing more than anything?
More than anything, I think that as a species, we are missing the understanding that when we connect with relational language and resonant language, we support one another's best selves. And when we connect by telling people what to do, or by giving advice, or by trying to fix, or by minimizing, or by trying to change someone's feeling, as in your story, where the father was changing his little girl's feeling, trying to change his little girl's feeling from distressed and sad to happy and giggling. I mean, we can all see how this father is so wanting to contribute to his child, but the tragic expression is neurobiologically unsound. It contradicts the child being able to unfold into the person that they were born to be. Because there's a reason for our sadness. And once we get to be held for the reasons for our sadness, or there's a reason for our joy, and once we get to be held for the reasons for our joy, the deep longings, the loves, the passions, the values, the needs, then what happens is the brain unfolds the way it wants to unfold instead of having to do something different.
Is there a danger in interrupting and changing the feelings, in that it basically creates like an incomplete circuit in the brain? Basically, you get to instead of having feelings come in, be felt, resolved, maybe not the right word, but to come to the end of that and to shift into the next feeling, to that flow of that.
Yeah.
Does the younger brain have trouble basically doing that? Is that interrupt part of addiction and being drawn into things to more immediate fix?
It does. it's difficult for a brain on a number of levels when this happens. So you asked if it was dangerous. It's not exactly dangerous. It's much more common than we realize that we all minimize the expressions of people that are around us, that we change the subject, or that we offer a few words of "it's going to be all right," some kind of reassurance. It's so common. We all live in it, almost like it's the oxygen that we breathe. But what happens when we don't catch one another is a terrible loss of heart connection. Like the connection and the unfolding beauty that's possible if a father is able to turn toward his daughter and be with her sadness with her is, there are so many losses, and this comes back toward the word you used, danger. But one of the losses is that a child then believes that their sadness is not really acceptable, or that it has the capacity to stimulate somebody else to take action that they may not enjoy. So the child may learn to swallow their sadness and not to express it, so that they can avoid being tackled and tickled. And it even starts much earlier than this. We see research that shows that by the age of 4 months, we have already given up whatever facial expressions our mother found difficult to reflect with ease. So if our mom avoids sadness, then by the age of 4 months, before words even come to fruition or even have begun to be dreams inside of a child's brain, we are already cutting off entire swaths of emotional expression in order to be able to stay in relationship with the mother or the first parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because certainly at that point in life, that's everything.
Yes,
I mean,
that's
that's life, really.
Yeah.
Find a way to live and
Yep.
don't have control and all of that. Very dependent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm enjoying the idea of feeling into the girl not expressing sadness because she doesn't want to get tackled. It feels like a really strong to me. I'm just feeling how much beauty there is in her desire to control her world in a way that supports her.
Yeah.
Say, I don't want that to happen. And it may not be conscious, but I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to hold this in. Like that feels like a really self-loving act, really.
The same thing happens with joy. That so many people have experienced being ridiculed or humiliated or diminished or held with contempt when they bring excitement and joy to a conversation. And so they stop bringing excitement and joy. They make a promise to themselves not to do it anymore. And it gets wired in. The experience of being humiliated, met with humiliation, is so intense that it wires that promise in almost like an internal physical prohibition.
Right.
Yeah. And then if somebody accidentally expresses joy, then they actually, their own nervous system shuts them down, and they can have like a shame spiral as a result of having been too happy or having expressed more than they think other people would like to hear.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm a little hesitant, but that really resonates with me. I've had that experience myself, still do.
So your nervous system is saying, Paul, take care of us here. Don't go there.
That's not quite how I do it, though.
How do you do it?
So what'll happen with me a lot of times is I'll get really excited. I'll be having a great time, and I'll get loud. Like I'll get really loud. I'm just like having so much fun. Like I don't want to restrain myself at all. I'm having such a good time. And then I get like, shh, like calm. There's people here. Like be quiet. And I'm like. And it's the dilemma, and I don't know, shame doesn't fit for me in the moment. There's some part of me that so enjoying, and then to have somebody come to me and feel like they really want me to put a lid on that, it's a mourning. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a weird, difficult, it's sad. And especially going from so much joy to sadness so quickly.
Yes.
Call it like a whiplash. It's not just like the car stopped. It's like, no, the neck went.
A ricochet.
I was going forward. Now I'm going backwards.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know if you have any thoughts around that dynamic in particular. Yeah. And like I said, I like real, so that's real.
Yeah. It's nice that you don't have to have a shame whiplash, but it is hard to go to a sadness whiplash.
Yeah.
I wonder if your nervous system needs acknowledgement that you, first of all, might really enjoy playmates who can meet you energetically.
So you can't see this on the podcast, but my eyes just got, when she said I lead playmates, my eyes lit up, and it was like, oh yeah, playmates, yes, people, and that's really true for me. That's what I long for. I long for people that can play with me when I'm in that space, and not only not like, okay, quiet, like that's too much, like, but like to actually like, face me in it.
To be joined
in it, to be met. The physical that I'll do with some people sometimes is I'll actually, to express intensity, I'll actually like push people. So I'll put my hands on their shoulders, they'll put my hands on our shoulders, and we'll just lean into it and like just push each other, like wrestling. Like there's something about, I want to be met in
rough
the energy.
and tumble play.
And just like, yes, it's play and it's fun and it's physical.
And Marilyn just said connection. Yeah. And it's physical. Yeah.
So I have a question, Sarah, that I would love to ask you. I would so enjoy hearing you talk a little bit about attachment in community.
Attachment in community. So the first thing to be able to talk about attachment in community is to give our listeners a bit of a sense of what attachment is. So the way that humans connect to one another is very strongly connected with which hemisphere they are dominantly in, which brain hemisphere they are dominantly in, and and to what extent they have been met in these moments of sadness, exuberance, delight, sorrow, shame, fear, anger. The extent to which we have been really deeply met changes our brains. And the more that we have been met, the more we can meet other people. The experience of easy meeting of ourselves and others is called secure or earned secure attachment. So it's secure attachment if you got it from your parents, and it's earned secure attachment if you have developed it over time through practice groups and empathy buddies and empathy exchanges. If we are a little more in the left hemisphere, we are what's called avoidantly attached. And if we're avoidantly attached, our nervous systems are pretty solidly ticking along, and at the same time, other people's emotional expressions are too much for us. So our avoidant, and we all have a pie chart of all of the different attachment styles. So for me, in my avoidant attachment, for example, I was talking to someone who has a job a little bit like mine recently. We were at a lunch, and this person said, "I'm more exhausted by my job than I had hoped to be." And in that moment, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to do a little empathy? And I opened my mouth, and instead of empathy coming out, I heard myself say, "Do you think you could job share?" And I was like, that was not a right hemisphere resonant response, Sarah. That was you problem solving for this person across the table from you. Why are you so intent on problem solving for this person across the table from you? And I tried to get myself to do some sort of empathetic comment. and I couldn't. My pump was dry. And some days later, I realized that I kind of wished that there was another Sarah that I could job share with. So I had unexpectedly hit a little speed bump in my own mourning that I had never really mourned before. So there I was, Sarah Peyton, author of Your Resonant Self, completely unable to dredge up anything that remotely resembled an empathetic response. And this is, my pie chart of avoidant attachment. And what happens when we're avoidantly attached is that when the emotions are too big for us, it's like we flatten. And so then we tell people to be quieter, and we diminish things, and we fix things, and we tell people everything's going to be okay, instead of being able to be in a resonant response. And it's true for all of us. Or at any rate, it's true for me, and I hope it's true for all of us, so that I can just be part of the human race. And then there are two other kinds of attachment. One is if we're really like connecting with people, we're open for relationship, but we've never really been held in our own upsets or our own joys. And in this case, our parents didn't shift to the left to diminish us. They got freaked out when we had emotions. And this is called ambivalent attachment. And then the final kind of attachment is traumatic attachment. And it's really unpredictable. So people that have traumatic attachment can get really close to people really fast. But then once they're close and intimate, all kinds of stuff can happen. Paranoia, accusations, a sense of not being understood, it's impossible to be understood, all kinds of things like that. So we all have all of these different kinds of ways of being with one another. And in community, the closer our community gets, the more the difficult issues start to come out. So, for example, if we have a community where we meet once a year for 3 hours, like we come from all over the country, we meet for 3 hours, it's like magic. It's like we've got a shared purpose, we're getting together, we're not together long enough for any of the difficult patterns to come out. Everybody's securely attached with each other. It's easy, it's icing on the cake. But if we're in community over a period of years with one another, then the dragons start to come out of the closet. Then the diminishment begins to become clear, or the contempt starts to arise, or the unpredictability begins, or the accusations start flying, or the grudges are held and held and held and held. All of these things are characteristic for all of us when we begin to move more closely together. Partly because humans have a certain amount of the self that is conscious and a certain amount of the self that is entirely unconscious. And the unconscious part takes offense easily. It believes that our boss is like our father, to go back to that first constellation story that I told. In that moment, it's like, what's in the room in a community that hasn't been named? Whose parents are in the room that are wreaking havoc that haven't been identified? How are we carrying pain that we believe has never been seen or never could be seen in our families of origin, that we then carry that prediction into our communities? I wonder how it is to hear me talking about this. Susan, am I answering this question in a way that's interesting at all to you?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I can see myself in what you're describing, and it's opening some awareness for me.
It's always the question, who is in the room? Yeah. And how can we give them empathy, even if we can't see them?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is part of that process, though, seeing them? Asking who's hiding in the room, who's here?
Part of the process can be making them visible. And part of the process can be making guesses that hold the possibility that empathy is needed even if we don't know by whom.
Or for what?
Or for what.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can hear people's panic in their voices. You can hear often we think people are angry and they are actually panicked. They're scared or worried or upset, or they're really wanting the best for everybody, and they are caught in a vortex of helplessness or hopelessness. Yeah. So as we begin to name, to make guesses at and name, I mean, it's a very interesting thing when you hear somebody that sounds angry to say, are you panicked? Are you worried about something? You know, it's a different approach than, I can tell that you're angry. You haven't looked at me since we got into this room.
Right.
Yeah.
Which also helps us unhook from taking it personally.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
If I think someone's angry at me or I think someone's just panicked, I have a very different response in my own body.
Yes. It's like, are we in relationship with their left hemisphere, which uses blame to integrate new information, or are we in relationship with their right hemisphere? It's nice to remember that their right hemisphere, the hemisphere of panic, is there, even if it sounds like all you're hearing is blame. It's nice to remember that the blame is always an overlay on something else. I was having a wonderful conversation just yesterday with someone who had received a whole slew of judgments about their capacity to function at work. So they had received like you don't show up on time, you don't get your work done, the way that you're running your team, you're making things more difficult for the entire working community. And the person was devastated to receive this litany of complaints. And they believed they were true. And then somebody said to them, did you know that person is speaking jackal to you? In nonviolent communication, when we say speaking jackal, it means that the person has feelings and needs that are not being expressed, and that they are using words in ways that tragically give the other person the impression that they've done something wrong or that they should be doing something better. And so when the person, it was like this person, it was like a light bulb went off. Oh, that wasn't true. It was jackal. Oh, that wasn't true. It was an expression of pain. What happens if we bring acknowledgement of the pain? Or what happens if we bring self-expression with a request for self-responsibility in language? Both of these are options for us.
I'm picturing you, like, just hearing you talk about the hemispheres of the brain and how the brain works. I'm wondering if when you talk to people or when you interact with people, if you see what brain they're talking with, like it's sort of like the Matrix, like you see things that maybe other people don't see because of your knowledge and your experience. I'm wondering how that is for you when you're talking to somebody. Do you like go, okay, like that's probably 3/4 this part of the brain and this part, and they're talking from here. Do you see things in that way?
Well, I think that nonviolent communication in a decades-long practice moves us to hearing everything, to hearing the needs that underlie everything. So I remember that Marshall said that at a certain point, you don't even hear the jackal anymore. Right. You just hear the underlying feelings and needs. And that's my experience now, is that that instead of, if somebody's coming directly at me with blame, then I need some support. And if somebody is telling me about being exhausted when it comes a little too close to my own experience, I obviously cannot get to a resonant language guess. But if it's a little less personal, then I'm very interested when I hear people's judgments. And very interested when I hear people's blame, because it's got life energy in it. And you're going, wonder what that life energy is. Are they panicked? Are they worried? I've been doing this with people's inner voices, as I had mentioned earlier, but I'll do a little example. somebody was working with me and their inner voice was, "You little brat. Why do you think I would want to do that for you? You never do anything for me." And so my empathy guess for the parent within them who had obviously said this to them, not just implied it, not have it as an internal voice for themselves, but physically they had obviously said this to their child. My empathy guess was, internalized parent, do you need, or parent of this person, do you need acknowledgement that you are on your last nerve, that you have nothing left to give, and that you have not received anything in so long that your well is completely dry?
Mm. Yeah.
And there's something very interesting that happens when we step into that place of listening deeply for what is really happening with intense, even with intense jackal expression.
Yeah. I can resonate. I heard us, actually, all of us kind of are the the ones that weren't talking, have a breath. It felt really true. Like, oh yeah, that. And I've certainly had that experience many, many times where it's like, no, that was such a beautiful example of how to hear the beauty behind the jackal, the difficult language. So.
So Sarah, I'd love to go back to another question about something that I witnessed, and that was a child, a different father, where the child was upset about something, and I witnessed and heard the father look at her and say, "What's wrong with you? Why are you crying? Are you physically hurt? I don't see that you're physically hurt. So you have nothing to cry about. So why are you crying? So stop crying. You have nothing to be sad about." And even just sharing this story with you, I can feel it in my body. And my question for you, and I think my need here is for hope, is so a child who receives those kinds of responses from a father, a mother, a caregiver, a teacher, whatever, what I'm yearning for is a kind of a confirmation, affirmation that as another caregiver in that child's life, if we go into that same child's life and we let them know that we give them a sense of feeling felt about what they're experiencing, how much does that really help when the primary caregiver
Changes everything.
Even if it's one small interaction, like even, and I didn't in this case, but even if later I had had the opportunity to go to this child and say, you know, "You're sad, you're hurting." And does it negate or what happens from the lens of neuroscience through that first response that this child received? And then as another caregiver going into this child's life later, what kind of an impact does even one small interaction carry in that child's brain? What does it do?
Well, let's just expand it a little bit from one interaction to being a grandparent, first of all, because, or let's start there, because there's research that shows that if there's a grandparent that is in sweet relationship with a child, even if they don't get to see them very often, it actually stops the transmission of disorganized attachment from generation to generation. So grandparents have tremendous capacity to change children's lives. In terms of and I noticed that you were really moved when you were speaking, and I'm really moved, touching on this, because we do need hope. But when you interview grown-ups about moments that were really important, you'll often hear grown-ups talking about one moment of kindness, one moment of recognition, one moment of warmth, one moment of not being blamed, of not being held responsible. I'm not exactly sure how to do it, but lately I've been dreaming of, I guess because I was working with so many teachers just recently in Maine. I was teaching for 6 days in Maine, and many of the people in the audience were teachers, and they were thinking about adverse childhood experiences and how trauma impacts children, and what can the teacher do about it. And some of the teachers have started telling stories about trauma and what trauma does to generations of families using animals, like talking about a family of squirrels and being able to tell a story about a daddy squirrel who had lost his daddy when he was tiny and was always mad because his heart was broken, and then that the little squirrel blamed herself because the daddy was always mad, so he was always mad at her too. And little animals' brains always believe that they are at fault. I think it would be really cool if in every school, in every classroom, all across the world, the teachers would tell the students, did you know that every little child's brain believes that they are bad and wrong when the parents around them are scared or angry? Did you know that children's brains are constructed to take on responsibility, even though they don't have responsibility? I think it would just be an interesting teaching point for everybody if we all knew that our brains are made to believe the worst about us when we're little. Our brains don't even start to be able to see the possibility of holding other people responsible until we're 9 years old. So there's, 8 years and 364 days of internalizing blame. Yeah. How is that to hear?
Yeah. Just taking it in.
Yeah.
I hear in a lot of what you've been saying and talking just a huge level of commitment, a huge amount of care, and a leaning into hope. I see your book here, and all the work you're doing as you talk about the classes and everything. I just want to share my appreciation for all you're bringing to the world. And yeah, I feel warm in my belly sitting here talking to you.
Thank you. So many people write and say, or speak to me and say that this work is changing their lives. It's so foundational and so radical. It's something very different than the way we are usually taught to be with each other.
I'm hearing beauty. Something beautiful in it.
Yeah.
Divine maybe is too strong a word, but a beauty that approaches that to me.
Yeah.
It's really sweet. So,
And it's
Marilyn looks like...
Well, it's radical. You use that word, and I'm just appreciating how today, because of what we understand through interpersonal neurobiology, this is what I find when I talk to people, because we can talk about it from that perspective of what we're wired for, it changes everything. 50 years ago, we didn't have that language. So it's like, yes, this is how we've been educated to be, but this is what we're built for. And it persuades.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I'm really resonating with that. For me, in my experience and my learning of neuroscience, I find, you started off this conversation, Paul and Sarah, talking about self-compassion. And for me, understanding what my brain is doing, understanding why it's doing what it's doing, has given me a lot. It's informing me, and I find that I'm more able to be self-compassionate because I'm understanding myself in a different way. Yeah.
Wonderful.
What was the word?
Radical?
Radical. Thank you for being radical. I'm celebrating radical. I like radical, especially if it mixes things up and helps us have relation to things in a different way and gives us a new standpoint where we can use it to embolden and enliven ourselves.
Thank you. I am very happy about that as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Wow. You're a gift.
So I have a couple more things I'd like to do before we close. One of which is I want to play a game with the three of you. And then the second thing would be just to check out with how can people find your work, get your book, websites, emails, whatever you want to give out as far as contact, anything you want to say about your work or how to find out about where to find you. Let's do the game first. The idea of, so this is called the noticing game. And what we want to do is, it's a sentence stem. I haven't done this with more than one person, so we'll just go around. I'll start. I'm noticing. And then I will say something I'm noticing. A thought, a feeling, a body sensation, whatever's alive, doesn't matter. Okay? And the idea is to be present with each other in the moments as we do that. So as we go around the circle, then you would say, hearing that, I'm noticing, and whatever you're noticing. It can be something related to what I said or not. They don't have to be connected. They can be. So pretty simple rules. Let's go around and do, let's do 4 rounds. I'm noticing that I am leaning forward on my elbow on the table here towards the microphone because I'm engaged and I have a slightly mischievous smile.
Hearing that, I'm noticing that it makes me smile, that I am experiencing smiling as a result of your engagement, and that I feel warm and happy.
And hearing that, I'm noticing how I'm joining in, how just being with you, both naming that and the visuals that I'm getting, how I'm joining in. There's a sense of joining in with you.
And hearing that, I'm noticing that for the first time that I can remember in my adult life, I'm really hungry physically, and usually I don't let myself get this hungry because it brings up so much anxiety. And I'm noticing I'm really hungry and I'm really okay. And I'm curious about that. It feels like freedom.
Hearing that, I'm noticing how much I enjoy connected community and moments with people that I know and people that I'm meeting.
Hearing both of these things, I feel total relief because I've been really worried about Marilyn being hungry.
Hearing that, I'm feeling a lot of gratitude for myself for eating a few bites of salmon before we started.
And hearing that, I'm also feeling gratitude because you gave me a bite of your salmon, and it didn't look like you had a whole lot. And also, I am going to save my next one for the 3rd round.
Hearing that, I'm feeling peaceful joy.
And hearing that, I'm noticing that I have a lot of curiosity about what Marilyn is saving for the 3rd round.
Hearing that, I'm noticing that I'm just happy to just be and be curious about what's going to happen next.
Hearing that, I'm hoping I'm good. And seriously, I'm hearing that, I am noticing that getting to come to Denver and be part of this whole weekend for me is like dying and going to heaven. It's my favorite kind of play group.
Hearing that, I'm appreciating, let's see how I say this. I'm touched. Seeing Marilyn and hearing Marilyn say that.
And hearing that, I notice that I feel a lot of gratitude for your emphasis on aliveness in our connection today. It's been sweet to be in the presence of.
Hearing that, I'm feeling tingling inside of my body for the pleasure that I'm experiencing just being in the company of the three of you.
And hearing that, I noticed myself get a big breath, and I noticed another layer of sensing my own existence.
Thank you all for your presence and your knowledge and your drive and commitment. And I feel all of you right now. I'm really thankful for that.
You left out mischievousness.
There's a little mischievous. That's true. I'm not sure that came across completely on the recording. So, having said all of that, thank you all for that. Sarah, if somebody wants to know more about you, your world, what you have to offer, what would you like them to know?
I would like them to know that the book is called Your Resonant Self, and that you can find it on any online bookseller, including Palace Books in Portland, Oregon. And that there's a website, and it's called yourresonantself.com. And it actually has a free download of all of the guided meditations that are the central kind of core of this book. So please go to the website and download and enjoy. I teach workshops and retreats all over the world, and I would love to have people come and join me. And there's online offerings as well that all can be found through the links on the website.
Great. Thank you for joining me today. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Just gratitude to RMCCN for bringing me here, and to Marilyn for driving 6 hours from Wyoming.
Normally 6, somehow I made it in 4.
And
There's the mischievous.
and appreciation to Paul for creating this. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you all, and we'll leave that to a close. Thanks so much, Sarah, for
I want to
being
thank you,
Sarah.
and I want to also thank you, Paul, for this just delicious experience of deep fun.
Cool. Let's rock. Let's do this. Let's teach the world.
The words deep
and play
fun
while we
and
do
Paul
it.
Johnston go together for me.
Exactly. Talk to you later.